Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Are you already dropping more giant plot twists and character revelations on me again, Kubo? Are you really doing that to me again? Fine. I've been made to feel like an absolute idiot again, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that in a bit. The Soul Society arc was incredible, and was such a roller coaster, especially toward the end, obviously, but I should have known that Tite Kubo wasn't going to let us rest for very long after that, and I'm honestly thankful for that. We're thrust into a new arc with new challenges already appearing, and as Aizen's ascension sort of promised, we are finally getting the Hollows back into the story. If you know anything about my journey through the series, you know how big of a fan I am of the Hollows, and how much I've felt their absence lately. As much as I enjoyed the intrigue and the sword clashing, Bankai summoning chaos of the Soul Society arc, I couldn't help but miss the masked monstrosities, you know? And I'm so glad that they seem to be coming back in full force, and in a new, fresh way, too. I thought that going back to the mortal world might mean a little bit of downtime, a chance to reset and get our bearings before anything else too crazy happened, but of course I was wrong. Of course, Kubo makes sure that I'm wrong every chance that he gets. It almost feels a little personal at this point, but I think he just really likes to surprise his readers, which I appreciate. Still, I like that we get a little bit of Ichigo settling back to some normalcy. Balancing school and his duties as a substitute Soul Reaper, now all official with his pass. It's really awesome to see how easily he takes out the regular Hollows now. The things that used to give him real trouble are now handled in like seconds. He's grown so much, and that just makes his job that much easier, but there are still things that he hasn't faced before that he's not at all prepared for. A new student appears, and through him we get introduced to a different faction. The Visored. We learn that the Visored are rogue Soul Reapers that have gotten hollow masks and hollow-like power, so the holification that Aizen was talking about, and what Ichigo is apparently going through, is now shown to us firsthand. And it's not just them showing this kind of evolution either. No, in these chapters we also learn about the Arankar, hollows that have managed to remove their masks and attain Soul Reaper powers. The two groups seem to be two sides of the coin that Aizen introduced the readers to, and I'm excited to learn how exactly this process is completed, because Aizen seems to be turning hollows into Arankar with the Hogyaku, but apparently there have been hollows that became Arankar in the past without it, but they weren't potentially as powerful was my understanding. I don't know. It's a lot of information to take in, but it's also really exciting on both sides of it. In particular though, I have to wonder about the Visored and the means in which they attain these hollow masks. Since we have at least some basis we've seen of a Soul Reaper doing that. Did they have to go through the same trial that Ichigo went through to get theirs? You know, with the severed chains encroaching on themselves and all that? And if they did have to go through that, does that lend itself to my theory that Urahara was experimenting on Ichigo without telling him? Maybe secretly turning him into one of these Visored guys? They're rogue Soul Reapers, separate from Soul Society, and who else is an exiled Soul Reaper doing his own thing away from the Soul Society? Urahara. Coincidence? Maybe. I don't know, but I meant what I said last video. I do not trust this man, and this series keeps giving me more reason to not trust what I'm seeing. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. This new student, Shinji, shows that he has attained a hollow mask himself and knows about Ichigo's own mask, saying that Ichigo belongs with the Visored and not with regular Soul Reapers. Ichigo immediately declines, which, good on him. He just got to an okay place with all of the Soul Reapers in Soul Society. Don't rock that boat. At least not right now. Like, at least wait a little bit. During their confrontation, though, his spirit pressure is getting some attention, and tears in the fabric of the universe start being ripped open by hollows, and one of them looks familiar. A bit different, but definitely familiar. I've been so excited for the Grand Fisher to come back for a long time. I made it pretty clear in my first video for this channel how much his introductory part of the story meant to me and affected me on a very personal level. So a part of my heart associates the Grand Fisher with how impactful those chapters were for me. Plus, he had a great design, a cool gimmick with the lure, and obviously a very personal connection to Ichigo. There was just so much there to explore with him and Ichigo, and to be quite honest, I thought that he could eventually become like the main antagonist down the road. How utterly wrong I was, thanks to some big sudden turns in the story that happened now, as well as the fact that Aizen pretty much cemented himself as like the big bad. So I don't think my hopes and dreams for the Grand Fisher becoming the main villain of Bleach are probably going to be realized. Highly doubt it. This section of the video is going to be called, to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger, "Who is your daddy and what does he do?" So Uryu's father shows up to save him from a very powerful hollow, and he saves him by using Quincy powers. With what we knew about Uryu, it seemed like his father didn't partake in his Quincy lineage and had no interest in it, leaving the grandfather to train his grandson instead, skipping a generation. It seemed like he was like the dad in Three Ninjas, letting his son learn skills from the grandpa while he mostly stayed out of it. It's a bit of a deep cut, but if you've seen that movie, we can probably be really good friends. Anyway, back to Bleach. His father goes so far as to say that he can restore Uryu's powers on the condition that he stops associating with Ichigo and the Soul Reapers. I feel like Uryu would take the deal honestly, because being a Quincy and having those abilities meant a lot to him, like the legacy of that meant a lot to him. He'd probably ditch his friends for that, to be honest, at least for a little while, but we'll see. The new and improved Grand Fisher is looking a little weird with his face beneath the mask being able to be seen for the first time. Usually the Hollows have had that little mouth inside of their masks, and now we're getting to see what was actually beneath. Since all Hollows used to be human before they died and slowly descended into becoming their soul-eating selves, are these Arrancar just regaining a little bit of the humanity that they lost when they became monsters? Personality-wise, the Grand Fisher seems the same, but he was probably already awful as a human anyway, and visually he's definitely much more humanoid than the hamster I once knew and loved so much. The Grand Fisher may look different, but he's still bitter about what happened last time and immediately goes after Ichigo. Unfortunately for him, it's Kon in Ichigo's body instead, and Kon would have no doubt been killed immediately if not for the intervention of a charm that was meant to protect Ichigo, and more importantly, the person that gave Ichigo that charm to begin with. Okay. Now we can really get to the big thing. You know, the thing that we need to talk about. No, it's not Aizen again, but damn, it was almost just as effective of a surprise. Isshin. Yes, we need to talk about Isshin, dear old dad, who also just so happens to be a Soul Reaper and has been from the beginning. Kubo. Sir, this is so good. The reveal may not be quite as shocking as Aizen faking his death and being an evil mastermind, but Ichigo's dad secretly being a Soul Reaper is definitely up there as far as my favorite surprises in the series so far. Like, this is the same goofball dad, the guy that gets into hilarious feuds with his son, that absolutely adores his daughters, and just seemed to always be so blissfully ignorant. That's not to say that Isshin hasn't been serious from time to time, most notably when he talked to Ichigo on the anniversary of Misaki's death, which was seriously a good look at a grieving single dad doing his best, but we've never seen Isshin like this. But the implications for what this means about Ichigo, though, it's insane, and I went to bed the other night not being able to stop thinking about everything that Isshin's secret might mean. Like, at first, I thought Ichigo's spiritual power and unusual potential might have had something to do with his contact with the Grand Fisher as a child, but his aptitude for seeing spirits predated that, so that it kind of rules that out. And then I assumed that his crazy growth might be because of him starting to holify, which would allow him to break Soul Reaper limitations, and that's still probably a big factor to his continued growth, but him having a powerful Soul Reaper as a father, that has to be part of it. It has to. Like, presumably, Isshin ditched his Soul Reaper powers to be with a mortal and have children, and I wonder if that's even ever happened before. Like, is that something that the Soul Society has ever dealt with or seen before? Are there hybrid children that exist that are part human, part Soul Reaper? Apparently there's at least one, so that's gotta be part of it. And this is mostly me half joking, but also kind of serious. Knowing this now, was there maybe more to Isshin constantly ambushing and attacking Ichigo every morning in their home? Was he kinda sneakily training him without Ichigo realizing it? I know it's ridiculous, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, because anything's possible now, guys. Isshin is a Soul Reaper. And what does this mean for Ichigo's sisters? Is this why one of them, Karin, is like very in tune with her spiritual awareness? Because they're all part Soul Reaper? There's just so many thoughts that this brings up into my mind, and I just can't. I'm so glad I get to vent to you guys. I need an outlet. Anyway, it's fitting that we get this big father reveal when Isshin is up against the Hollow that killed his wife. But man, did it take me a little bit to wrap my head around how this fight ends. Isshin defeats this new and improved Arrancar version of the Grand Fisher with one blow, killing the Hollow and avenging Misaki. That's it. The anglerfish hamster is dead, The Grand Fisher is slain with one swing of Isshin's blade. I had no idea how to feel about this at first. Like I said, I thought he was being set up to be Ichigo's main antagonist, to grow into a serious threat, to contend with Ichigo's own growth, to maybe be the face of the Hollows and whatever's going on with them and Aizen. I really did think it would come down to a rematch between the Grand Fisher and Ichigo, another chance for our hero to rip out the root of his grief and his pain. But no, that's probably never gonna happen. I suppose anything can happen in a story about the afterlife, but it seems pretty definitive that the Grand Fisher is dead and gone. My boy, my beloved hamster, is dead. And after sitting down with that for a bit, letting it kind of process and mulling it over, I'm fine with it. In fact, it was probably a better move for the story than keeping him around. Things have grown exponentially since even Ichigo's fight with the Grand Fisher. In some ways, we've moved past all of that, just like Isshin apparently has. And if Ichigo wasn't going to get to be the one to kill the demon that destroyed their family, then I'm so glad that it was his father. I was pretty shaken by these chapters, to be honest. Not quite as bad as the absolute destruction of my brain that the Aizen chapters left. But I was pretty shaken up by all this, because within the span of 12 pages, Isshin was revealed to be a Soul Reaper and killed his family's greatest enemy. Wild. Seriously wild. I'm still processing that innocent dad is actually a badass. And apparently, Urahara already knew all of this, because of course he did. Of course he did. I feel more and more that I'm right about him being shady, and I'm right to be suspicious. He knew about Isshin this whole time, but never once brought it up to Ichigo? What's up with mentors not telling their pupils life-altering information that they should probably know? He might as well have pulled an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Your father was very much a normal human from a certain point of view. How can you not tell Ichigo about this? Maybe Isshin asked him not to, or maybe Urahara should not be trusted. Apparently, Isshin hasn't used these powers in 20 years, so has truly been living as a mortal. But he talks about regretting not being able to save his wife back in the day, so he didn't have his powers back then. Did he give them up to live a normal life like it seems? Did he lose them somehow? If he could tap back into it now, why not then? I mean, he wasn't there when she was killed from what we saw in Ichigo's flashback. It seemed like it was just Ichigo and his mom. Where was he? Why now? Where was he when Ichigo's running all over the city fighting Hollows, or getting stabbed by the Grand Fisher, or getting almost killed by other Soul Reapers? Where was Isshin during any of this? What was he doing? What was he waiting for? Sorry, I'm mostly just trying to process all this. I just need Isshin's life story right now. Also, I went back to this scene when Rukia first establishes that most humans can't see her in her Soul Reaper form, and Isshin was used to highlight that. He was standing there when they explained that humans can't see her. So my question is, did he see her the whole time and just played dumb? Or could he not see her because he apparently didn't have his powers at the time? I doubt that this was some oversight from Kubo, unless his plans for this changed later into the story. Whatever the case, I gotta know. Besides the huge reveal about Dad, these chapters help to make the board we're playing on in this arc more clear. There are multiple factions all heading for a collision course. There are the rogue Soul Reapers, the Vizards, who are trying to recruit Ichigo. There's Aizen and the Ironccar that he's creating to improve the power of his hollow army apparently. There's the Soul Society already beginning to mobilize. There's the duo of earthbound Soul Reapers like Urahara and Isshin, who we don't even know what they're really up to. And then there's Ichigo, a lone substitute Soul Reaper that'll no doubt be caught in the middle of all of this. It was a great setup for an arc with all kinds of new problems to overcome. It seems like it's going to be a lot coming from all directions. But guys, I don't know if I'll ever be over Isshin being a Soul Reaper. I can't wait until his son finds out the truth, because Ichigo and I both need answers. I need to know everything, so hopefully he learns the truth soon, because then Dad is going to have a lot of explaining to do. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you for the support. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know, did this shock you when you first were watching or reading Bleach? Did Isshin being a Soul Reaper shock you? Because if you couldn't tell, this was a great surprise. I hope you all have a great day. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.